What's up, YouTube Z-Pack? It's your boy Z-Dog MD. Come on in, come on in. We're going live. It's Labor Day. You know, what could possibly go wrong? We have finally completed and formalized the show's move to the Bay Area of California. And let's let some people come in and we'll talk about it. Hey, there's some buttons here. What does this do? Top chat, live chat. There we go. There's Mandy Breyer and Michelle Eslick, who is a supporter on Facebook as well. Kara Conley, Brandolyn Topizzi. What up, Brandolyn? You know what? I just realized I need to get your comments going on something that I can actually see them on. Hold on. Let me do this and unplug that and do this. Can you guys hear me okay? Let me know. What's up, Cody? What up, Steven? What up, Sharon? What up, Michelle? So glad to be here while you're live. You know, it's rare to catch the dog live these days because, you know, I don't ever announce it properly. All right, check it out. We moved the show from Las Vegas to the Bay Area because we moved my family from Las Vegas to the Bay Area. We'd been in Las Vegas for 7 years. Fantastic. Loved the place, grew a lot, built the show, did all kinds of things. But now I feel like if we're going to really take it to the next level, you know, we kept our house here, remodeled it, so we weren't priced out of the Bay Area. Otherwise, we'd be broke like everybody else in the Bay, which we are also broke. But the idea that we can get, you know, better guests, more interaction with universities, a different energy. Tom and Logan are going to be coming up. We're going to set up the studio on Thursday. So a lot of cool stuff happening. A phase 3.0 in the Health 3.0 movement. Let me see if I can get your comments up on my iPad. I don't know why it doesn't show up as a live. There it is. Perfect. Oh, there you guys are. Okay, so today, since it's Labor Day, which I have no idea what that means, you guys can teach me what Labor Day is. Has something to do with unions? I don't know. Let's read some comments and you guys can teach me. Edie Varclet says, beautiful home and family, we are prepping for Dorian. I'm so sorry. That hurricane looks nasty. And it didn't do a nice thing to the Bahamas. So, you know, thoughts your way, stay safe, and all the healthcare people who are going to be working during the storm, you know we got your backs. Many of you guys are fans of the show. Let's see. Good morning, Z. Love all your videos, so educational and informative. Hockey Chick 04. Thank you for that. And Carol finally caught us live. Pippi Longstocking is here. Okay, so one thing, and you guys can hear me loud and clear, says Michelle. That's good, because I'm using this little dingus. Let me know if there's any interference. I actually turned off the Bluetooth and all the other interference creating devices. So hopefully it'll be better. So, okay, Ray Romero says Labor Day, the first Monday in September, is the creation of the labor movement and is dedicated to the social and economic achievements of American workers. Awesome. Sounds like communism to me. I'm just kidding. All of us are American workers, right? If we have a job. And I like an idea of like celebrating the fact that we work hard to build the country, make the economic engine turn, support our families. And in healthcare, that's really, it's even magnified more because we often sacrifice quite a bit, just like workers in other industries. But it's a little bit special, I think, because we often put our own health and welfare secondary to our patients and our families and the people we're trying to support. So, you know, I guess big shout out on Labor Day. Michelle says she spoke to a security guard at her hospital and he's willing to practice an active shooter drill without us running it up the flagpole like on a weekend. Hospital says it's not in the budget. You know, seems like it ought to be in the budget since it's happening all over the damn place. You know, Ray says it used to signify the beginning of the school year as well, but here in Florida, where I'm a teacher, started a month ago. Yeah, my kids went and started school 2 weeks ago, so I guess it doesn't anymore. I understand you're not supposed to wear white pants after Labor Day. That's the significance to me, but what do I know? Anyway, so one of the other things I want to talk about, Donald Hoffman, who I had on the show, cognitive scientist out of UC Irvine, studies visual perception and cognition, did an episode with him that was audio only. We did it remotely, and I'm a big fan of his work on our perceptions of reality. His new book, The Case Against Reality, is out, and it's available on Amazon. I'm listening. I read it before it came out. I read the manuscript and was like, yep, I buy this. This seems legit to me. And there's some science here. Now, you may or may not agree with some of the precepts of the book, but I suspect it's very difficult to argue with other precepts of the book. And what it basically says is that, okay, and it does relate to medicine and healthcare, but even if it didn't, I'm still fascinated with it. It's called The Case Against Reality, topoisomerase 2. And it's available on Amazon. You can actually Google Donald Hoffman, ZDogg MD, and hear our podcast together, and there'll be a link to the book there. What Donald Hoffman is saying, and he said it in a TED Talk as well, more eloquently than I'm going to say it, is that we seem to think in science and in general intuition that the world as we see it, in other words, iPhone, cup, person, is in fact representative. It's veridical, if you will. It shows truth to what's actually happening in the objective universe. In other words, if I see a cup, when I turn my head away and I don't see it anymore, it still exists in space and time, here and now, as a cup, a collection of glass molecules, silicon, and all that exist independently of my observation of the cup. And that space and time are actually a real thing. In other words, there are 3 dimensions of space and a dimension of time, and they exist whether or not there are conscious entities to perceive them. In other words, reality is as it appears. Maybe we don't see all of it because we know we don't. We don't see all of the electromagnetic spectrum. We can't perceive the very small or the very large. Relativistic speeds confuse us. Quantum mechanics perplexes us. But in general, oh, hi, Risa. Yeah, the video quality is pretty awesome on YouTube. YouTube is way better than Facebook for video. I'm starting to realize this. Facebook is kind of ghetto hack for video. I may have to start shifting our supporters to support on Facebook or on YouTube instead, but that's a whole nother discussion. So this idea that as humans, as entities, we really do reify, we make real space and time and objects. And it makes sense because from an experimental empirical standpoint, all our science seems to say these things are real because we can manipulate them in predictable ways. We can use math and equations to actually predict what they're doing. And it feels right because when a snake shows up in your field of vision, the thing actually exists as a snake. It can bite you, it can poison you, you better get away from it. So you better take reality seriously because our vision, our sight, our sounds, our imagination actually reflect what is existing in the real world. Well, it turns out Hoffman points out something that violates our intuitions, but is probably true, that this is absolutely a lie. So he studies visual perception. He studies a game theory and sort of mathematical models behind evolution, fitness, and the idea that organisms compete. Thank you for the $5, Stephen. Organisms compete to survive in the world. And it turns out that space and time and objects are really unlikely to exist. In fact, almost a 0 probability to exist as such, but more likely that they are icons in an interface that is species specific, that shows us only fitness payoffs, not reality. In other words, we see these icons that are designed and selected for by millennia of evolution that have one purpose: to allow us to reproduce, get enough food to reproduce, and survive. That's it. They do not show us the underlying zeros and ones of reality. And his studies and his game theory and other things like that show that fitness always beats truth in evolution. In other words, organisms evolve to see fitness payoffs. In other words, an apple looks red and delicious and this far from us. All that is a data compression structure that allows us to survive. The fact that it looks red and delicious means that there's a fitness payoff if I eat it. I'm going to be more likely to reproduce, more likely to survive. The fact that it has space and time, in other words, that it's this far away from me, is a fitness icon. It says it's going to probably take a little more energy for me to get to it versus if it's closer. But space and time and apple as such do not exist. What exists in reality, there is something there. In other words, there is an underlying reality, but it is nothing like what we see and perceive. And even more so than that, our minds are constructive. In other words, they construct our perception of reality on an ongoing basis. So if I see this cup, this clear glass cup right now, my mind is taking whatever actually exists in the data of the real universe, and it can, thank you for the money, James Solar, $9.99. It constructs an icon in real time that I see that says glass. And all that icon is a fitness desktop like on our computer. It says, this is what you can do with this to survive. It's got this shape, you can grip it this way, it can hold things that will help me survive, it's transparent, which means I can see danger and predators behind it. But in reality, this is not a glass. Now the question is, well, you would say, well, but I see a glass, and he sees a glass, and they see a glass, therefore this must be a real glass. In reality, otherwise, why would all of our perceptions agree? Well, they all agree because we all evolved similar routes as Homo sapiens, whatever that means, to see these same fitness icons. Now, even within Homo sapiens, there's variation in our perception. Red, green, colorblind, people with synesthesia who hear colors or see sounds. Those are mutations or variance in perception. There is no spoon, as the kid in the Matrix told Neo. There is only our constructed perception of a spoon that has been evolved over millennia to help us survive. So the question, and listen, if you think this is crazy and it doesn't make sense, in his book, The Case Against Reality, what Hoffman does is he goes through systematically and debunks every argument against this. What does quantum mechanics show? A lot of weirdness. Why is it weird? Well, it turns out electrons don't assume a spin or settle down in a cloud to a position until they're observed. Well, that makes very little sense in an objective reality. How can something be a wave and a particle at the same time objectively? People have never been able to figure this out. Well, it makes perfect sense if the entire electron is an icon constructed when a conscious agent views it. Well, then it's only going to obtain a space and a time and a position and a momentum and a spin when Zubin looks at it or you look at it. And how we look at it, the angle, the perception, the viewer, absolutely matters in how it settles down. So the shocking truth about this, which is something that Einstein didn't quite believe, is that the moon doesn't exist in space and time as a moon until you actually look at it. Then it obtains an icon that is species specific that allows us to survive. Why might the icon of the moon allow us to survive? Because by seeing it, giving off light in a certain location, at night we might say, oh, it's going to light where predators can see us or where we can see prey in the middle of the night. So that is a species-specific adaptation to see whatever the moon really is. And we can talk about what that is in a second, as this icon. So it starts to make you question this reality that we see. Oh, and by the way, space and time, in the book, he describes as really what it is a data compression algorithm. So we're able to see a lot of complexity by reducing it to 3 dimensions and putting it on a timeline. It allows us to survive. But none of this is actually the nature of reality. Space and time are an animal construct that we use to make sense, to correct for errors. So see how I see symmetry in this cup? Symmetry is an error correction and compression strategy. Instead of seeing the actual nature of what this thing represents, I simplify it to something symmetrical, which allows me to infer then, okay, overall it has this kind of property for fitness, allows me to reproduce. I don't have to see the details of it. So human faces have symmetry, but in reality, symmetry may not exist in the actual fabric of the universe. It's really fascinating. So what does this actually, Cal says existential crisis incoming. Yeah, because what this means is we create reality from something that really is there. So there is the object in and of itself. There is something that is a cup, but it is nothing like a cup. In the last part of the book, Donald Hoffman then proposes, well, so if space and time are illusory constructs that we use to survive, if objects are just icons in what he calls ITP, the interface theory of perception, that every organism sees the world through its own interface. Your cat sees the world through an interface that allows it to reproduce, that is optimized based on fitness, that has evolved over millennia to do this. We do the same thing. Our space-time is our desktop. These are our icons. What is reality then? Hoffman argues that reality could simply be a vast one-dimensional social network. By the way, he uses Hawking's research on black hole event horizons and the fact that all the information encoded in a 3D space can actually be encoded on the surface of that space, which is the holographic principle that many scientists have talked about. And so that's another way of saying we could take something very simple and spin up a universe from it in our minds. And that's really what we do. So what is the nature of the universe? This is where it gets really crazy matrix deep. The actual nature of the universe is it's made up of nothing but what he calls conscious agents. And a conscious agent is simply something that's able to perceive, decide, and act. It has just 3 functions. It can experience the world, it can have an intention, make a decision to do something, and then it can act on the world. So it's consciousness acting on other consciousness in a vast social network of increasing complexity. So you can have a 1-bit conscious agent, like a quark, that can perceive, decide, and act, upspin, downspin. That's what it experiences. And when it interacts with a bunch of other quarks, it forms something more complex, like an electron, which then forms part of an atom, which then forms part of a molecule. Increasing complexity of conscious agents, each exchanging experience and experiencing the world through its own interface. And as that interface gets more complex, like humans are vastly complex, nested conscious agents. So our little subminds, our subconscious are all parts of this vast network, exchanging experience. And then we experience the vast social network around us in the form of this, space, time, objects. When you see me, you're seeing an icon that represents the insane complexity that is actually me, which is this phenomenally complex series of conscious agents. Same when I see you. But how do we make sense of that in order to reproduce and survive? We reduce it to face, eyes, symmetry, voice, gestures, emotions, trying to pick up on emotions and cues. But in reality, it's so complicated. And the analogy is your desktop on your computer. We simplify a desktop so we can use icons and trash cans and folders. But if we saw the transistors and voltage gates and quantum mechanics going on behind the scenes, we would never be able to compose an email let alone not go insane. And the same goes with reality. So what does that mean? It means that when we try to explain the hard problem of consciousness, in other words, why would a 3-pound mass of wet goo create the taste of chocolate or the feeling of a migraine or the experience of love? It's never been figured out. We're not even close to understanding why that is. And so people say, well, we're just not complex enough. Our limitations of human mind is that it can't understand itself and so on. But Hoffman argues, why should that be? What if we just have it wrong? What if neurons and mind and brain are just an icon? And what's really happening is it's consciousness spinning up the universe, not the other way around. Wouldn't that change pretty much everything in the way we perceive reality? Now, the question would then become, how would science work? Why is it that science is so successful? Hey, sweetie. Why is it that science is so successful at explaining the mechanics of the world if objective reality isn't explained by what we see? And the truth is, of course it's successful. We evolved an interface that makes perfect sense to us. Science is simply us better figuring out how to manipulate and predict that interface's behavior. So I'm really good at moving icons around on a desktop. If you watch a kid play Minecraft, a really smart kid who's been playing it a long time, when you watch them playing Minecraft, they are deftly manipulating that world in a way that it looks like magic to you as a grown-up. You're just like, wow, how did you do that? That's what the most brilliant scientists are doing with our desktop interface, which is reality. But in reality, neither the child playing Minecraft, they don't recognize the transistors and voltage gates and zeros and ones and pixels that make up Minecraft. They don't need to. They just need to manipulate the interface. In reality, as we experience it, scientists have gotten really good at manipulating the interface to the point where they can zoom into that interface. And what do you see when you zoom into the interface of a desktop computer? Pixels and smaller pixels. And what do scientists see when they zoom in to the interface of our reality? Electrons and quarks. And then you know what? What if we build a matter collider and put a lot of energy and spin the interface fast and collide our pixels together? What do we see? Smaller pixels, down and down and down. But are we actually seeing reality as it is, or are we just getting deeper into our own interface? So why has physics and philosophy hit a wall? Why is it that the deeper we look, the more shit we find, but we don't get any closer to understanding the nature of reality? Because we have it backwards. Start with conscious agents, and the currency of the realm isn't electrons and photons, it's experience. It's a conscious agent interacting with other conscious agents in an infinite and eternal social network that spins up space and time as a matter of its own desktop so it can play in this world and evolve and survive. Increasing complexity. And so Hoffman talks about summing up conscious agents mathematically. He has equations for it so that you can then explain how a single bit conscious agent could combine with other conscious agents, exchanging experience and increasing complexity. Have you ever been to a football game where it almost feels like everybody on your side that's rooting for your team is synchronized? Have you ever given a talk, I've done this, where there's 4,000 people in the audience and everybody's looking at you, and suddenly you get this experience that we're all one awareness on the same wavelength, experiencing the same exact thing. And scientists have looked at this. People, if you run EEGs on people's individual brains, they synchronize when they're undergoing this kind of group phenomenon. Well, how is that different than a single conscious agent summing up from the conscious agents that make it up. The rabbit hole goes deep, you guys. Like, it gets crazy. And when I talk to Donald about this, I am absolutely convinced that we've been kind of misunderstanding the entire fabric of reality. And we're trying to figure out, how does depression happen? By reducing it to icons on our desktop. And it turns out that's where those icons fail us. So we have a serotonin icon that we're trying to say, oh, this icon is causative. It's causative of happiness if we increase its levels. Well, that's not how reality works in this interface theory of perception. Serotonin is an icon that we see in our perceptive interface on our desktop, but it may be the wrong way to look at how to understand depression, which is an experience of a complex conscious agent. Maybe depression is related to the interaction of these subconscious agents, and serotonin is an icon we see for another conscious agent that interacts in a way that temporarily at least changes the balance. So maybe then things like cognitive behavioral therapy, talk therapy, our social relationships are more important to depression than these chemicals, which are icons. And it gets crazy. So maybe as healthcare people, if we understood the interface theory of perception, we could understand where the limits of manipulating our desktop are bumped up against to, and where we need to start thinking things like the mind-body connection. It's really one thing. And if we can understand how to manipulate that scientifically, then we can do a lot of good in the world. All right, time to read comments. I'm sorry, I got deep on Labor Day. Stankin' thankin'. So Hoffman is basically saying we still have no idea, but with 300 pages of words. No, actually, read the book. So he's saying, no, we actually have it wrong. If we look at the world this way, and then come up with theories that fit that, then we can actually start to predict, well, does the world behave according to these new theories? If they do, we have a new theory of reality, the conscious agent theory. So he's actually proposing something even more radical than we just don't know. He's proposing, no, we don't know currently like this, but we could know. He's saying, so Immanuel Kant said this hundreds of years ago, that we don't see reality as it is, we see it filtered through our minds. And Hoffman is saying something even more radical. He's saying, we don't see reality as it is, but we can understand reality with the right construct, the right mathematics, and the right conception, and we just have it backwards. Let's see here. Michelle Eslick is talking to Crystal. Maybe other life forms have advanced so far that they know we are too early in our development to see them. So this is interesting. You start thinking about aliens and things like that. Well, first of all, aliens assume that space-time... Oh, okay, wait. Forget all this. Let me back up for a second. It turns out that quantum mechanics actually increasingly shows us, and quantum mechanics, by the way, is one of our scientific algorithms, our worldviews, that has been the most extensively studied empirically with experiment, and is shown time after time after time to be true based on experiment, even though it makes no intuitive sense to us as humans. It violates all our deepest intuitions about space and time and reality. Quantum mechanics actually shows us that a particle, a photon of light emitted by a quasar, billions of light years away, that was formed shortly after the beginning of the universe in our current conception. The universe is 13.6 odd billion years old. That quasar can be viewed through a telescope, and as its light passes around very gravitationally heavy galaxies, there's something that Einstein predicted, which is gravitational lensing. So the light actually bends around the galaxy, and you see two copies of the quasar because of the illusion of the light bending around a, quote, gravitational lens. Well, it turns out that that photon of light could end up going either direction around the galaxy billions of years ago. But which direction it took depends not on what happened then, but on what the observer is measuring now. So if you put a device to measure the photon at in a certain configuration, you may see two galaxies. If you measure it in a different way, you may see just one, which implies that how you measured that photon now retroactively writes 13 billion years of history back to when that photon chose to go this way or that way around the galaxy. Now, does that make any sense that we can rewrite history? It only makes sense if everything, if there's no such thing as photon, distance, and time, but rather only the observations of conscious agents using their perceptual interface. And we create the history of the universe in real time based on our observations, because there is no history per se. There is only consciousness interacting with itself. And it can create a storyline of Big Bang because it makes sense in our interface currently. And so everything we know about reality starts to make you go, wait, this is not right. Now, it then makes you think all our stupid hang-ups and everything that bothers us, it's all really illusory. Yes, that helps us survive, being anxious, worrying about the future, being focused on appearance, craving things, because we evolved that way as conscious agents to survive in this matrix. But now we're at a point where survival depends more on our relationships with other conscious agents, with other humans, with each other, with the planet, with all these other things. And we can survive in a different way. And that will get us hella woke. All right, let's see some comments here. Callie, $2. It's my birthday, literal Labor Day for my mama. Happy birthday, Callie. Thanks for being with us. You can hear Z-Cat screaming over there. Now, Michelle Eslick asks a good question. Why do we want to see more than our icons? And I would argue because we're limited by the icons. Imagine being trapped in your desktop interface on a computer. There's only so much you can do by programming it unless you go deeper. When you understand the true nature of reality, you can manipulate the icons in a way that's much more robust. So you want to solve world hunger, understand that wheat is an icon, water is an icon. If you can understand how to manipulate the underlying bits of reality, the information that springs those icons into a 3D hologram that we experience as reality, you can manipulate that hologram and cure world hunger, which ultimately is the experience of hunger for conscious agents, the experience of grief for a mother whose child dies of hunger, the experience of misery for somebody whose crops have been wiped out by, a plague of locusts or a drought that we can't control because we don't understand the underlying bits in this interface. Stankin Thankin said, so if Hoffman is implying a predictive model through his theory, is this his attempt at a gut grand unification theory? Yes, and he talks about that in the book, a TOE, the TOE, or theory of everything. He says that the reason we failed to get a grand unified theory, to unify, by the way, these are great questions, Stankin Thankin. You're on point. The reason we have failed to get a grand unified theory, a gut, or a theory of everything, a TOE, what up, Z-Pup, is that you have relativity, which says that information can be destroyed at the event horizon of a black hole. And you have quantum mechanics, which says no information can ever be destroyed. And they are in abject conflict. How is it that the very big and the very small are in conflict? And we live in this middle space where we think middle-sized objects are real, are objective reality. And the reason is that we think space and time are real. We think that objects exist independent of the observer. We believe in something called local realism, which means that when I don't look at this object, it still exists as a glass. Totally untrue. The minute you let go of objects and reification of middle-sized objects and space and time as a real thing, you unify these theories. And mathematically, he started that process by looking at conscious agents and how they interact and saying, you can have a grand theory of everything where you can spin up general relativity, quantum mechanics, and middle-sized objects from simple mathematics around conscious agent interactions. That's where you got to read the book, because I can't explain it, because I don't understand math.
You're confuzzling everyone like you're confuzzling me.
I'm confuzzling you? That's a brilliant word. Alas, entropy carries on while we desperately try to classify and categorize. Ashley. Entropy is an interesting thing. We got to talk about that another time. Jonathan Sellers, the Z-Pups are just starting in the back. That's very true. Let's read some more comments here. Have you read the book or seen the movie, What the Bleep Do We Know Anyways? Rhonda Schneider. I've heard about it. Haven't read it, though, or seen the movie. Sarah Crane, I think medicine is both. Considering a medical doctor practices medicine and science, develops the drugs for treatment. I think she's talking to someone else. Let's see. Scroll back here. Okay, so those are the main comments here that are relevant to this. What's the book called again, says Kira? I'll put a link in to the actual show in the description that you can look at, and it's got a link to the book. It's on my website, zdogmd.com. The book is called The Case Against Reality, Why Evolution Hid the Truth from Our Eyes. And it starts out a little slow. I recommend getting the paper copy because the audiobook doesn't have the diagrams that are important.
The audiobook?
I'm talking about an audiobook, yeah.
I was listening to it.
Mm-hmm. Speak loudly, because I have this.
It was so boring. And like, what?
Speak loudly.
Okay. Hi.
They were listening to me listen to Hoffman's audiobook in the car because I was brushing up on it. And they were like, this is the most boring thing I've ever heard. I'm like, you don't find local realism, quantum mechanics, and the fitness-based truth theorem, along with the interface theory of perception, the grand unified theory, to be fascinating stuff? Like, why not?
I mean, I found it fascinating, but I didn't understand it.
That's true. And then, you know what? So after I explained it basically to her, I said, we don't see reality as it is. We see it as like you see your Minecraft world, like this kind of fake world. And she said, oh, so probably when you die, you actually experience reality as it is. And I was like, that would be nice.
No, I did say probably. I said you might.
Yeah.
0, 0, 0, 0, 0, wait. Point 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, point 1. Wait, what? No, never mind.
You're insane.
I said it wrong. I said point 0.0000001.
Stankin Thankin says, I watched Interstellar and Arrival back-to-back yesterday, so in simple terms, you're blowing my mind right now. Stankin Thankin actually has the right questions and the right avatar for this. The I think, therefore I am. You know what's interesting is this whole theory actually corresponds with what Buddhists have been saying for millennia, which is all experience is ephemeral. It's only an icon. We are only experiencing the here and now. Space and time are illusions, and meditation is our empirical microscope for experiencing more of reality as it is, which is the arising and disappearing of phenomenon. And that's it. Nothing is permanent. You don't grasp. You just liberate yourself by realizing that suffering is the grasping to something that doesn't exist. Let's see. Maybe we're just a game someone else is playing. Sharon Frazier. So this idea of simulation theory, that we're living in a simulation, Hoffman addresses this. It doesn't address the root base reality. So even in base reality, what is real? We're avoiding that question by spinning up simulation theory. We have to figure out what is base reality. And he's saying base reality is consciousness. That's it. You can consider this a simulation that consciousness creates in order to survive in the vast social network of consciousness. By the way, if space and time aren't real, can you imagine no space and no time? So what you're being asked to imagine is something that's impossible for humans because we have an interface that uses space and time, and we're conditioned from birth to use space and time. But imagine something outside of time. That doesn't mean everlasting, that's time. It means eternal, outside of time. And imagine something without space. It doesn't mean unlimited space, it means infinite, meaning without definition of space and time. Yes?
Ask 23andMe to send more of these shirts. They're amazing.
That was a nice shameless plug for 23andMe, which I wasn't paid for. Um, Jonathan, he said the audiobook doesn't have the diagrams. Oh yeah, hockey chick. Yeah, get the physical Kindle book. Get the Kindle book because it's cheaper, or the hardcover. I originally read it as a PDF that Donald sent me, and it was very helpful that way. I think the audiobook is very tough to follow just because it doesn't have the diagrams. You get them as a PDF, but whatever, hey, however you like to learn, that's what you should do. Stankin' Thankin', while on the subject, are you leaning free will or determinism? Does Hoffman talk about that in his book? Oh, go Stankin' Thankin'. So we talk about this in our podcast with Hoffman. All right, listen to this. This is what's amazing. So, free will, if you ascribe to determinism like Sam Harris and others, and most neuroscientists actually subscribe to this idea that we don't really have free will, it's an illusion. Causes and conditions in our mind just arise, and we feel like we have agency. We feel like we've made a decision, an intention to move my hand, an intention to pick up the cup. But if you really actually explore that intention, it came from darkness. We have no sense, we cannot understand the unconscious forces in our mind that lead us to make these decisions. They're conditioned by environment, by genetics, by a butterfly flapping its wings in Africa. It's just, and then it arises and we get this sense because our mind constructs this idea of I, which is an illusion. It's a construct. There is no I. There's no person sitting in our mind pulling strings, making decisions. There just isn't. You can't find it if you look. And with meditation, you can look for it and fail to find a self. And in that failure to find the self, you actually find a degree of liberation and realize everything's just arising and passing away. There's no I to blame. There's no I to chastise. So I am actually, to the extent that I can be, not a believer in the classical idea of free will. However, Hoffman gives us a unique look at free will. And I think it's the best summed up by calling it free won't. So in Hoffman's estimation of mind, which I agree, and it actually agrees with The Mind Illuminated, which is a book that I use for meditation, and the sort of ancient Buddhist conception of this. The mind is really a nested almost infinity of sub-minds, which are made up by smaller and smaller conscious agents, ultimately reduced down to a 1-bit conscious agent that has 2 experiences, on and off. And then a 2-bit conscious agent, which can be on, off, up, down, and you keep getting more complex. So a human mind, as signified by the icon of brain, neurons, etc., just an icon on a desktop, not an actual thing in itself, really representing all this nested conscious agent interacting with itself. The lower level conscious agents are conditioned, perceive, decide, act, that's what they're able to do, by what the higher conscious agents above it, just like we're conditioned by the higher level conscious agents around us. Maybe it's atmosphere, ecosystem, earth, galaxy, whatever it is. So our decisions are free to the extent that this instantiation, this level of consciousness can make decisions, but they're conditioned and limited by the conscious agents underneath us that bubble up experience that we then act on, and they can condition the conscious agents underneath us. So we can condition our unconscious mind through experience, through overriding. So, ooh, I really want to punch this guy in the face. Stop, don't do that. That's free won't, not free will. And underneath us, those conscious agents are conditioned by our education, by who we surround ourselves with, by meditation, by lack of meditation, by drug use, so that it's this constant interplay. So free will is actually vastly more complex than just I made a decision. There is no I. There is we as a nested social network of conscious agents interacting with each other in a vast complexity. So free will is much more complex than simply I am a free agent. It is more like I am a nested free agent within an infinite nest of free agents, all conditioning each other. Therefore, there's a lot that is not within my control. But there's quite a bit that, as this particular level of free agency, I can do. But again, holding a murderer accountable for a murder that was committed because the murderer was, conditioned from birth by psychopathy, having terrible parents, being poor, being conditioned that murder was okay, all of this, and then makes this decision. In many senses, that was not a free will decision, but in some sense, you have to condition humans to believe that it was free will, otherwise they will continue to misbehave. So you need some societal, in a way, society is a higher level conscious agent that includes all of us and conditions the lower level conscious agents, me, to not commit murder or crimes and to behave nicely in an airport instead of running around screaming bomb. It's really quite fascinating. The rabbit hole goes very deep. Good afternoon, Megan. Crystal says you should watch the movie Powder. It's an awesome movie about a boy who keeps using more and more of his mind. Interesting. Caitlin Bossert. Also, if you're interested in this topic of oral health being segregated, read Mary Otto's work. Okay, so we're having our own conversations here that I'm not a part of, which I love. Scott Johnson, it sounds like a version of Cartesianism. Cartesianism has been around for centuries. No, actually, it's not. Cartesianism, and we should talk about that another time, that we're getting into philosophy. Cartesianism is that there is a little man in there and an infinite nest of little men that are all making decisions. That's not really what I'm saying. I think. Jamie Sue Farrell says Stankin' Thankin' is Hoffman. It's possible. That's the great thing about YouTube. You can hide your real identity. Caitlin Bossert, Z-Dog, I'm a dental hygienist. What are your thoughts on the divide between dentistry and general medicine? How can I help bridge the gap? So in reality, there is no divide, right? It's all a continuum. Oral and systemic health are related entirely, and it should be one thing. So I'm a believer in the holism between dental and systemic health. They're just one thing. It's all one body, one mind, all the same thing. So we got to look at it that way. Let's see. We don't need you anymore, Z-Dog MD. Jonathan Sellers, thank goodness, because I'm tired. I love it. So here, let me ask you guys a question real quick. What do you guys think of YouTube as a forum for these kind of discussions? Do you think this is a better place than Facebook? Do you think that it's a good addition to Facebook? Or do you think neither is good? Let me know. So someone's asking a question here. Let's see. I like that. Free will versus free won't, Callie. I think it's a good way to look at yourself. So instead of chastising yourself, I made this terrible decision, I'm full of regret. Look. What is depression? Depression is regret about the past. I'm worthless because I did these things. Whoops. Dropping the damn phone. Andy Lloyd is like texting me like medical questions about his kid while I'm trying to do a show. Depression is sort of regret and misery about the past. Anxiety is anticipatory regret and misery about the future. If you believe in true free will, that I'm a free agent and that I am absolutely to blame for any missed decisions or future problems or past mistakes, that is going to be very hard on you. If you believe that you're a complex neuronal storm of conscious agents and that you can do better in the future by understanding this, you are going to, first of all, forgive yourself for things that have happened in the past and try your best to influence other storms and your own storm in a positive way moving forward. That is a much more apt recipe to get out of depression and anxiety than self-blame, that negative voice in your head that implies that there is a person behind your eyes, a little Cartesianism there, pulling the strings, doesn't exist. You're a complex thing, and all of this is the desktop interface that we've spun up to make sense of it all because our minds aren't sufficiently complex to see reality as it is, except through things like meditation, where you can experience initially the individual bits and bytes of experience on a very microscopic level. And this is actual experience that you can have by looking at your mind, by actually learning to pay attention, by practicing. Eunice Tart says, I just joined, big fan, love doctors and nurses. I'm an RN, but away from my VA for 4 years. My goal is to be one of you again. You already are one of us, Eunice. Stay with us. Be part of the conversation. You have a lot to add. What do you got, baby? How you guys doing? What are you guys doing over there? Stuff? Music theory, that sounds boring. Music theory, you doing violin music theory? Like what? Like like, is it time that you're working on, time signatures and rests and things like that?
And like yeah.
Yeah. Oh, one thing. So let's say everything is like she is an icon, but what she actually represents is this vast fractal of consciousness. Wouldn't you want to spend as much time in your moment, in the present moment, experiencing the inner subjective reality between you and her? Like whoever your loved ones are. Like after the show, go and pay attention to them. Be present with them. Experience that inner subjective exchange of experience in the desktop that we've constructed, and really, really, really be present for it. And you'll find a lot of suffering, a lot of grasping, and a lot of illusion starts to fall away. Let's read some comments. YouTube, though, is better than Facebook because it's much more organized, more of an academic platform, I would say, Michael Rega. I think that's true. I think the organization, sorry I'm rubbing my eyes, but I have allergies, and I'm starting to get these allergic shiners from rubbing my eyes. I don't take meds for it because I hate medication because I'm a doctor. Irina Yakovenko, I started to notice that I feel depression and anxiety after eating something that makes me feel not well, like a post-sugar snack, free-ish will. Well, this is interesting. So we are made slaves to our physiology, hormones, the cortisol release from stress, and those kind of things if we identify with our emotions. So if we identify with our depressed feelings or our anxious feelings, if we get lost in the sauce and we think there's an I and I am depressed, instead of what experienced meditators will do, which is depression is arising, right? A feeling of depression is arising. There's nothing to do with I. There's no I. There's just depression is arising. Looking at that feeling, experiencing it with mindfulness and attention to it, and going, oh, this, like all things, will pass, and it does. And the minute you realize that, you find the grip of depression, the grip of anxiety starts to diminish. So there's that. Sarah Crane says, I'm a YouTube junkie. I have a Facebook account. I rarely use it. Glad to see you using YouTube Live. Yeah, I think I like this. The quality's better. The comments are better. At the same time, I would never give up my Facebook supporters, the subscribers on Facebook. That is a great tribe. You guys want to have fun, come be a supporter on Facebook. I probably will spin up a supporter tribe on YouTube too and figure out a way to integrate the two, because I think it's nice to have a closed space where you can speak really freely. And this isn't it, because people can see this, right? Hitchhiker, depression is not just feeling sad. No, it's not. Depression is a ruminatory loop. So I misspoke. Sad feelings you can experience. Depression is the alteration in your entire worldview, where everything is seen through gray lenses, right? So I am worthless. I am no good. The future is bleak. Those kind of things. Life is not worth living. It's a filter through which all perception is now distorted. Mindfulness can actually, and cognitive behavioral therapy is a kind of mindfulness. It's recognizing the thought distortions that go into depression, catastrophizing, black and white thinking, projecting feelings onto other people that aren't real. All these kind of, there's like a list of them, right? If you read John Haidt's The Coddling of the American Mind, they have a whole appendix to kind of, I think, devoted to this. Recognizing those distortions and realizing, oh, that's actually not true. It's a cognitive distortion that's causing me suffering, and I need to let it go by seeing what's actually going on. So, it's interesting. Where are we at here? Michael says, so you say that there's a potential that beta amyloid plaques associated with Alzheimer's could isolate some, okay, people are talking to each other, that's great. I'm gonna stay out of that because I haven't been following it. I know this is off topic. Oh yeah, alpha gal awareness. Okay, I'll let you guys talk about that. Yeah, I think that's all I have today. I mean, it's Labor Day. You guys should be out having barbecues. I'll take you on a little walk. Let's go on a little walk real quick, just so that we can get outside for a second. Hey, sweetie, you want to come on a walk outside with me? Lead the way. There you go. So part of the reason we moved back here is to really take advantage of, wait a minute, did someone just give me 99 bucks? What the heck? Julia Del Vecchio sent basically 100 bucks. Wow. Julia, that is tremendous. We use your donations to actually support the show, the big studio productions we do, the music videos, my team of like 5 people. It really means a lot that you would do that. Thank you so much. Seriously, I am looking at you, Julia, and thanking you directly because it's so important what you just did. And others seem to appreciate what you've done as well. And listen, you guys don't need to do that. I'm just happy you're here. But I really want to give a shout out to people who do that as well because it means a lot to our show. So part of the reason we moved back to the Bay Area is to experience our friends and family that are out here, the vast social network of conscious agents that make up the universities and the intellectual life here, but then also just being out in nature, which you have it in Vegas, but it's different. It's a nature that I definitely appreciated for a long time, but now I'm learning back to kind of, well, let me see if I can get this thing to focus, to appreciate this, which is gorgeous. I really like it. Callie, this is palliative care Z-Pack. Oh yeah, Callie. That's why I love palliative care, because it understands this truth. I know, Michelle, 100 bucks. That's so awesome. Julia is amazing. Really kind of her. Let me see if there's some comments related to that. Other people are so kind to her too, which is great. God, I love you guys so much. Let's see. So, Sarah, thank you. My girls are kind of precious, to me anyways. Who removed my comments, says Voltron5112. No one. I can't remove comments. Well, I can, but I don't know how to do it. So Stankin Thankin says, I have this idea. Life boils down to hungers and their satisfaction. Most, if not all, personal and interpersonal problems arise from misinterpreting hungers and satisfying them wrongly. Thoughts. Okay, listen to me, Stankin Thankin. I'm going to sit down for this one because it's important. Your questions are amazing. Yes, baby?
Nothing.
You're just stomping on some juniper? I like your earrings. Okay, Stankin Thankin, this is important. We need to answer this right now. All right. This idea that all of life revolves around hungers and aversions. So this is an idea that is 2,500 years old and starts with ancient Buddhism. So what it says, I'm going to try to hold this stable because I don't have my stabilizer. I'm using a little tripod. I apologize. It's so shaky. What the Buddha said was that you need to recognize the 3 core, problems that create suffering. And my feeling, and I think Hoffman would agree, is that those core problems were actually evolutionarily adaptive. So one of the core problems is desire, grasping, wanting, needing. Why would that be adaptive? Well, oh, dude, check this out, check this out. You found a nail? That's my backyard. So we're on a trail, which is super dope. Yeah, pick up the nails, collect them all. Isn't that cool? So anyways, I love biking too, so it's like the perfect place to live. So, okay, here's the thing, speaking of desire. So desire is one of the root sort of causes of suffering according to Buddhism. And of course it makes sense evolutionarily because you are conditioned and evolved to desire things that will help you survive. The problem is in our current world, it's gotten so out of control that these are maladaptive now, where they cause stress, unhappiness. You're always on a hedonic treadmill, wanting more and more and more, chasing what you think will make you happy when in fact you already have it. It's the present moment. It's those around you. It's your relationships and your connections. But we don't have that. And I think a hunger or desire for human connection, as Trina says, is exactly a big part of it. Yes, baby. Oh, be careful, don't let it go on someone's foot. You may want to dig it up and throw it away because someone might step in it. In a second, I'm talking about the nature of the universe. Um, so desire is one, the other one is aversion. So getting away from things you don't like, and that includes boredom. So I'm so bored. Well, you have an aversion to just being with yourself. And the third one is delusion. The idea that you identify with your thoughts and feelings, that you forget that even neutral experiences are deeply profound, and you forget what you are, which is the arising and passing away of conscious experience in the present moment. And those three sort of pillars of unhappiness can be addressed through practice, through meditation, through spiritual practice, through even, I think, scientific pursuit of understanding why we behave the way we behave. And so they are actually, you are onto something there philosophically. That is the root of the path to liberation from unhappiness. So let's see. Callie says, do you think that the reality and the value of the individual do you think that the reality and the value of the individual is addressed in Western civilization? So actually, Western civilization was the first civilization in history to reify, to elevate, to deify the individual over the collective. And this idea of trust your feelings is a romantic Western notion. This idea that an individual rights matter. These are not fundamental properties of the universe. These are collective fictions that we tell ourselves. They're stories that we live by. And they work. Western civilization has, and if you listen to Yuval Harari on this, he talks about this much more eloquently than I can. Western civilization has really elevated the individual. Now, with this comes a loss of some societal emphasis, of some emphasis of community and collectivity, and the idea that the individual is always right means consumerism starts to flourish, because why shouldn't the individual seek out more material comfort to make the individual more successful, more rich, more comfortable, and have more power over other individuals? And this is a root cause of a lot of suffering as well, but it's been very effective in an economic engine and has driven much of 20th and 21st century thinking in the West and now in the East. The question is, what's the next evolution of this? And it's going to have to transcend the individual, include the individual, but transcend it.
Try to guess where it is.
Guess where the nail is? I'll probably step on it and find out. You buried it really well? That's probably a dangerous thing to do. Let's read some comments. Michael Rega, is this the same idea from history expressed by Sam Harris? So actually, I don't know that Harris talks, he's had Yuval on the show. It's really a Yuval Harari thing. But Sam, you know, and again, yeah, Homo sapiens was his book, Blue Mermaid, but also the sequel, which is called Homo Deus, is actually even more interesting. And 21 Lessons for the 21st Century is one I'm reading now. Yes? Hold on, I'm still doing a show, but I will try to look for that nail that you conspicuously hid. Yes, Z-Pup 2.
You just got, like, well, a few minutes ago, you got $100, which is all mine now.
You saw the $100?
Yeah, I was looking at your thing, and I was like, he's done already? And I was like, I saw you guys outside, and I looked at the thing, and I was like, oh.
She wants my $100, but you can't have it. It's for the show. It goes into the account that we use to pay for stuff in the show.
You bury it in our backyard, and it grows a money tree, and it grows Vader suits.
Mitch, check it out. What's up, Z-Cat? Michelle says, I'm resistant to philosophies tied to religion. I'm always looking for an ulterior motive. Is it to control me, society, money? Well, yeah. You know, the interesting thing I've learned about, and Sam Harris taught me this. Sam is a hardcore atheist. I am as well, in the sense that I don't believe in any organized religion. But he's also kind of a Buddhist. And the reason is Classical Buddhism is not a religion. It's actually an empirical, scientific approach to the mind. It has nothing to do with deities. Never is a god invoked. It's purely, here's how you meditate, here's how you deal with other people, here's an ethical framework to increase happiness and decrease suffering. And so that's why Sam is an accomplished meditator, goes on retreats, and his teacher, Joseph Goldstein, is a renowned Buddhist teacher. And so it's interesting, even a hardcore atheist like Sam Harris can find much wisdom and truth in some Buddhist teaching, which I think is instructive. Is your cat a female, Sarah Crane? Yes, but we call her Mitch. Go figure. It rhymes with bitch, that's why, because that's what she is. Scott Johnson, and from a Christian understanding of the person, having regret over past mistakes, sins, is dealt with through the mercy of God who loves us and gives us grace to do better and be spiritually healed. So I actually think this is really interesting. Christianity as a fundamental foundation of Western thought, again, reifies the individual and holds it accountable as an eternal soul that can be judged. But what you just said, which is, in the light of God, obtain infinite compassion and forgiveness, is another way of saying we have that even within ourselves. And, you know, there was a really interesting anecdote told by Joseph Goldstein about his experience with the Dalai Lama in a Christian convent. They were walking through, and he... Don't bring the cat out. Seriously, she gets conditioned to want to come out here, and then she eats a bunch of stuff and she gets sick.
I'm not gonna let her eat.
Really a bad idea. You know what this girl did? She taught the cat to escape from our mudroom where we lock her every night so she doesn't throw up all over the house. She taught the cat to do that, and now the cat escapes, and we've had to come up with this increasingly complex system to keep the cat under control at night, because the cat will get in our beds and do all kinds of terrible things. And it's all because of the Z-pup. The cat has many thoughts on free will versus free won't, says Callie. It's true. It's absolutely true. So anyways, I forgot what we were talking about. Oh yeah, so the Dalai Lama walks through this convent, sees a statue of the Virgin Mary, and bows to it. And the priest who was running the thing was very taken by this and said, you know, this is really quite fascinating. And it speaks to the fact that there is a fundamental, underlying, perennial philosophy that pervades most of the best aspects of religion. And I say the best aspects because the worst aspects of religion are reprehensible and need to be expunged from the human lexicon. But the best aspects are truly this fundamental truth that has to do with compassion, present moment awareness. There's an ethics associated with it, which is how you treat other conscious agents in the world, and a oneness, a Holy Spirit in Christianity. The Trinity is, you know, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. What is Holy Ghost? We all have it. So interesting to me. Jonathan Sellers, Christianity is different from other religions because other religions require the believer to reach up to God, while Christianity teaches us that God came down to us to help us. Well, so Jonathan, you're clearly a Christian. Christianity as a viral phenomenon is quite successful because it encourages conversion as well. So as a meme, as an idea, it is incredibly successful. Whereas, for example, my parents are Zoroastrian. You're not allowed to convert to Zoroastrianism. It's an ancient religion. And so it's not a very successful meme. It's really quite fascinating. One thing that I dislike about religion is the dogmatism associated with it. The ours is right and everyone else's is wrong, I find very frustrating. But if you find a path to alleviate suffering through religion that does not hurt others and actually helps others, which is, I think, some of the fundamental core teachings of Christianity, unfortunately it's distorted by many, and that's true of every religion. Anyways, now we're diverging. So let's see. Everyone talk to their invisible sky daddy. Dakota Rain Carter. Callie, I'm an ordained dudist. So I'm technically clergy, but general ethos is to abide. But, you know, it does follow some Eastern beliefs. Sharon Fraser, dude, the dude abides. The do to buys, man. Okay, a line has been drawn in the sand beyond which. Yes, babies.
2 nails in the ground with this.
And a stick.
You did?
And a stick.
You pounded 2 nails in the ground with that?
Yeah.
With a stick.
Outstanding, outstanding. The dude, Michael Rega, man, Lebowski is God. I'm sorry if that's sacrilegious to some. It's just truth, just simply truth. All right, I think we did this. You guys, 90 people stayed with us the whole time. I'm really impressed. This was a great conversation. I got something out of this listening to you guys, and I hope we do this more often. Let me know if this is a thing. Do me a favor, do me this favor. Tell your friends to subscribe on YouTube and turn notifications on so that they can be a part of this. I want this conversation to be broader and reach people so that I can learn too. All right? There are flies. I'm like Pigpen from Charlie Brown. I love you guys. We out.